I don't even know where to start. I'm writing this because I can't get it out of my head, and maybe putting it down will make the nightmares stop. You've probably heard those stories online, about abandoned Cold War bunkers scattered across Nevada. People call them ghost bunkers. The word makes them sound harmless, like dusty ruins with rusted doors and old army cots. But the locals out here tell the stories differently. They say the bunkers aren't abandoned. They say people go in and don't come out. I first heard about them in a bar just outside Beatty, Nevada. Drunk prospector type, leathery skin, eyes so bloodshot they looked ready to bleed. He leaned over and said, "You hear him at night. The shaft's breathing. Like the desert itself is alive." I laughed it off then, but later I couldn't shake it. He called them holes that ain't supposed to exist. When I got back to my motel, I looked it up. Nothing. No official records. No maps. But I found scattered posts on old forums, threads buried in archives, dead links and fragments of conversations. People talked about bunkers with lights still on, tunnels that went deeper than anyone could measure, rooms full of things that weren't quite human. The accounts always ended the same way, no updates, no follow-up, just silence. And of course, me being me, that was enough. I've been an urban explorer for years, factories, asylums, drainage systems. Most of it's just rot and graffiti. But this felt different. This felt forbidden. Like scratching at a scar the earth didn't want to show you. So, against every instinct telling me not to, I packed a bag, flashlight, rope, camera, water, and drove out into the desert. No coordinates, no GPS pin. Just a vague direction from a drunken story and the gnawing itch of curiosity. That was the mistake. That's where it all began. I spent hours hiking across scrubland, sand crunching under my boots, the sun baking down until it felt like my brain was boiling. There's no shade out there, just miles of emptiness broken by rock outcrops and the occasional twisted shrub. I was about ready to give up, to chalk the whole thing up to a bar story and my own obsession, when I noticed something strange. A patch of ground where the heat shimmer didn't ripple. Instead of blasting hot air rising from the desert floor, there was movement the other way. Coolness. I got closer and saw it, a rusted ventilation shaft, half hidden under a tumble of rocks. Cold air whispered out of it, steady, unnatural, like the desert was exhaling. Nearby, the sand had shifted, maybe from a storm, and I caught the dull gleam of metal. I brushed it off with my boots and uncovered a round hatch, the kind you'd expect on a submarine, not out here in the wasteland. It was heavy, half-buried, with faded stenciling on it, letters too corroded to read. I froze then. I could have walked away. Should have walked away. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't just some relic. It shouldn't be here. But my hands moved anyway, gripping the cold wheel and straining until the mechanism groaned and snapped loose. When it finally creaked open, the smell hit me. Damp metal, oil, and something chemical, like a hospital corridor left to rot. The hatch yawned downward, a square of absolute black, and the faint gleam of steel rungs vanished into it. I shined my flashlight inside, but the beam barely touched bottom. That was the first moment I felt it. The sense that I was trespassing somewhere alive. And then I made the second mistake, I climbed inside. The ladder felt endless. Every rung was slick with condensation, my palms slipping despite the dry desert air I'd just left behind. I kept shining the flashlight down, expecting to see a floor, but it just kept going. 10 feet. 20. 30. By the time I stopped counting, my arms were burning. That's when I noticed it, the hum. Faint at first, like a vibration through the metal rungs, then clearer, almost mechanical. A low, constant thrum that didn't belong in a place that should have been abandoned for decades. I told myself it was just the wind whistling through the shaft. But the deeper I went, the colder it became. Not the kind of chill from stale air, this was sharp, biting cold, the kind you feel in freezers. My breath fogged in the beam of my light. Then the lights came. Not mine, actual fixtures in the walls, way down below, flickering weakly but on. I froze on the ladder, staring at the pale glow far beneath my boots. Electricity. Someone, or something, was still feeding this place. Every instinct in me screamed to turn back. But I didn't. Curiosity pushed me deeper, each rung clanging softly under my boots. The smell got stronger the lower I went, ozone, mold, and something faintly metallic, like rust mixed with blood. I finally felt solid ground under my boots. The ladder ended in a narrow corridor, concrete walls sweating with condensation. The humming was louder now, pulsing through the walls. The flickering lights buzzed overhead, half dead but steady enough to show me rows of doors stretching off into darkness. And I realized something. The air wasn't stale. It was circulating. Breathing. Which meant whatever this place was, it was still alive. The corridor bent left, then right, then widened. My boots echoed against the concrete, the sound swallowed almost instantly by the sheer size of the space I stepped into. It wasn't a hallway. It was a hall, massive, cavernous, hidden beneath the desert like a secret cathedral. My flashlight swept across the room and caught glass. Dozens, no, hundreds, of enormous tanks lined the walls, stretching up into the shadows of the ceiling. Each one filled with some kind of cloudy liquid, pale shapes drifting inside. For a second, I thought they were mannequins. Training dummies. Maybe even cryogenic experiments left over from the Cold War. Then I looked closer. The figures weren't still. Their limbs floated unnaturally, too long, bent at odd angles. Their faces, if you could call them that, were slack, eyes half open but watching. Mouth slightly parted, showing teeth that didn't quite line up. They weren't human. Not anymore. One of them twitched. Just a finger, brushing against the glass, leaving a smear as if it were reaching toward me. I stumbled back, my light shaking across the tanks, catching more details I wish I hadn't seen: skin too pale, stretched taut like parchment, eyes milked over but aware. Some of them were pressed against the glass from the inside, as though they'd been trying to claw their way out. The worst part wasn't what I saw. It was the realization that the humming I'd heard the whole way down wasn't coming from the walls at all. It was the tanks. Pumps, tubes, machines still running, still keeping whatever was in there alive. I should have turned back then. But I couldn't. Something about the silence in that hall was magnetic, like the air itself was holding its breath. And then I saw it. One of the tanks wasn't whole. The tank at the far end was shattered. Not cracked, burst. Thick glass lay in jagged shards across the floor, glistening with slime. A sour chemical stench burned my throat, and the liquid inside had spilled out in a wide puddle that was still wet, still spreading. And there, pressed into the slick concrete, were footprints. Not boots, not shoes. Bare. Long toes stretched unnaturally far, leaving imprints that looked like hands more than feet. They led away from the tank, across the chamber, and into the yawning dark beyond my flashlight's reach. I froze. My pulse was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears, drowning out the hum of the machinery. But then, another sound. Something shifted in the shadows. A faint, wet slapping noise, like bare skin dragging against damp stone. Slow. Careful. Moving just out of sight. My flashlight trembled as I tried to pin the source. Each time I swung the beam, the sound stopped. Each time I pulled the light away, it started again, closer. I knew then I wasn't supposed to be there. That thing, whatever had been inside the tank, was loose. And it was hunting. The tanks around me seemed to press closer, those pale, distorted things floating silently, watching as if they were witnesses. As if they knew what was about to happen. I forced myself to move, boots slipping in the chemical spill, heart in my throat. That sound, wet, dragging steps, was